Hi, this is Jim from Trek World, and join me today as we take one of the most in-depth looks at a Star Trek episode ever taken on YouTube. All right, we're all familiar with bloopers, but what we're going to take a look at today isn't just bloopers. We're going to take a look at any time something appears to be just slightly off in an episode. It may be a blooper, it may be a continuity error, it may be a plot point that everybody missed. But along the way, we will talk about some things no one else on YouTube has ever talked about before. So pull up a chair and remember why we are Star Trek fans, as well as why we have the reputation for analyzing every last frame. Join me today as we take a look at Miri. And right up front, the first oddity we're going to see is the only use of italics ever in a Star Trek episode title. So before we go too far into the episode, I think it's important to point out the various family members that appeared in this episode as children. Most notably, of course, were Leslie Shatner and Lizabeth Shatner. A lot of people thought that Melanie was in here also, but Melanie was about 2 years old and was really just too small to be on the set. Additionally, Gene Roddenberry had his two daughters in the episode as well, Darlene Roddenberry and Dawn Roddenberry. Now, Dawn would also go on to appear in Pretty Maids All in a Row, the movie that Gene would make right after Star Trek, but that would be her sole outing in Hollywood. And unfortunately, we would lose Darlene in 1995 during a major car accident. And finally, two other young men appeared in this episode, Scott and John Dweck. Now, you may not recognize either of those names, but it might help you if you knew that their mother's maiden name was Whitney, as in Grace Lee Whitney. Now, interestingly enough, Leonard Nimoy was asked if he wanted his children, Adam and Julie, to be in the episode, but he really didn't want Hollywood anywhere near his kids at this particular point. But these weren't the only Desilu children on the set. Mission Impossible's Greg Morris had two children that did also make an appearance, Phil Morris and Iona Morris. Now, Iona would come back to play one more time on the other side of this, but Phil would return to Star Trek a total of 5 appearances before he was done. Now, the eagle-eyed TV watcher of the 1960s would probably be able to tell you this in a heartbeat, but it looks like Captain Kirk and company are beaming down into Mayberry. Indeed, this is actually the 40-acre lot set that was used by Desilu, and many shows were filmed there, including Mayberry RFD. In this particular scene that you can see right here is a very unusual shot where we can actually see the courthouse and Floyd's drugstore all in the same shot. As a matter of fact, I really couldn't resist just focusing on Floyd's drugstore. Obviously, it's not a drugstore in Miri, but as you can see here in this transition, it can change into the drugstore pretty easily. So let's roll up our sleeves and get started with the oddities, shall we? In this first scene, McCoy yells out when he gets attacked, and everybody turns and runs towards him, including the security officer. The problem is, the security officer never actually shows up in the scene. If you have any videos, photos, or documents that you would like to donate to us, please feel free to send them to jim@trek-world.com or submit them via the web at submit.trek-world.com. And in this next sequence, we see Star Trek's first self-cleaning shirt. As we enter into the scene, you can see that Spock is clearly covered with dust from moving throughout the various buildings and being involved with a scuffle that just took place outside. However, after he passes through this door, the next time we'll see him, his uniform will be clean. And I don't quite know exactly how to talk about this one, other than the fact, obviously, that the Enterprise crew member actually begins speaking to Kirk before the communicator even gets opened by Kirk. And interestingly enough, Kirk knows that there is a lieutenant waiting to talk to him on the communicator, even though it never chirped.
Captain Kirk? Yes, Lieutenant?
And since we're paused here at the end of that, we might as well take a look at the fact that Shatner once again has that communicator whose top slips back way too far. It appears to be only one of the original 10 that did it, but oddly enough, no one ever really cared to explain why it behaved differently than any of the others. So for the second time in the same episode, we see another self-cleaning shirt. Take a look at Shatner's shirt here as he goes through this fight scene with the Only. He drops her on the floor. You can clearly see his shirt is very dirty. Then it cuts from her back to him. He takes out a phaser and fires at her. But as he fires his phaser, his shirt is miraculously clean. And in this scene, notice the ropes are below Janice's elbows, but in the close-ups, they're above her elbows. Okay, I just gotta say it because I know it's probably on your mind too, but these communicators were taken and Kirk and company were out of contact with the Enterprise for 2 whole days. What was Scotty doing on the Enterprise? Why didn't they send a security party down there? They had scanners. They could know exactly where they were at after they beamed down. So that's a plot hole that was never really explained in any way. So watch the scab line on McCoy's face. When Spock turns his head, you can see where they're at. But there's going to be a close-up of Spock, then back again to his hands. And when that happens, the scabs actually have moved closer to Nimoy's hand before they begin disappearing up the face. And keeping again with the oddity of the original episode title being in italics, these end credits are in a font that was not used in any other episode during the first season.